everyone, welcome to a new video of mine. I figured since it was September and the kids were back in school and the fall leaves are starting to change and everything feels, fall and academic and all of that stuff, I thought that this would be a great time to do a video about books that take place at schools or have like a dark academia vibe to them. So we're gonna start out with the adult books because there's less of them. Because when you think of books that take place at schools and you start looking at YA, then like a lot of them do. So we're gonna do the adults first, especially since you've probably already heard of most of these. So I'm just gonna make it quick. I'm not going to spend too much time on any one book because I have a ton of books to show you and we will be here all day. So hopefully you find some books that you haven't heard of to add to your September TBR, and let's get started. So we're going to go ahead and start with the romance because there's only 2 of them. So the first one I read a month or 2 ago, it was a NetGalley arc called Given Our History. And this one had a lot of fall academia vibes because our 2 protagonists that are falling in love are actually both professors and they're both trying to get tenure and working together at a college, and so it has all of those vibes about it, and I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was like a friends to lovers second chance romance, so if you're into that sort of trope, then this one might be a good one to pick up. The next one is Educating Elizabeth. And this is a 3rd in a series, but I think they could be read as a standalone. You have this group of women who are friends, and each of them has some kind of ambitious thing that they want to pursue. But during Victorian times, it wasn't as easy for women to do the things that they wanted to do. So in the first book, she wanted to be a detective, and then in the second one, she was an inventor. And then this one, she wants to be a teacher, and she wants to start her own school for girls in the London East End, but she's down on her luck. She doesn't have a lot of money. She doesn't have enough to start a school, but it's always been her dream. That's kind of the point of this Blue Orchid Society, is they were trying to help each other, realize their dreams or whatever. So that was her dream, was to become an educator. And so she finds this man that might be able to be a patron and be able to put up the money to help her start the school. But, of course, there's always conditions. And so he says, well, you need to help my relative who needs help in elocution. So if you will come tutor him or her, it doesn't say, then I will help give you the money. And she kind of hates that she has to get money from this man because he's kind of a playboy and has women around him all the time. And she just rolls her eyes about it. And so she's reluctant to get his aid, but he's the only one that seems willing to give out money to her. So it sounds like it should be a good time. It's super, super short. I would classify this as a novella, to be honest. It's only 207 pages. So I haven't read this one yet. I read the first 2 in the series, and the first one I absolutely loved. Love. The second one was still good, but a little bit boring and slow in parts. So I'm hoping that this one will be a good one. Okay, so the first adult thriller that I'm going to talk about is The Teacher by Frida McFadden. And this one is about a teacher and a student who have an inappropriate relationship to one another. But it sounds like the girl that was part of the affair, she is, very like catty and gossipy and lies about everything and causes trouble in school. And so our main character, she's a teacher at this school, and as of right now, these are only rumors that she had this affair with this teacher, but she knows this student pretty well, and she knows that she's a liar, and she knows that she likes to cause problems, and so she kind of wants to take it upon herself to figure out what really happened and what really is going on with this student. So another book that has to do with inappropriate school-teacher relationships would be My Dark Vanessa, but this one's a lot more serious, and the student's definitely the victim and is being groomed by this icky man. So trigger warnings can be a little bit heavy and dark, but a good one. Speaking of heavy and dark, we need to talk about Kevin. I haven't read this one yet. It's been on my shelves for ages, but I hear it's about a school shooter. So it's about this mom and her relationship with her son, and her son grows up to be a school shooter. And she's kind of trying to figure out if it was her fault, because she was not the best mother, and maybe that played a part in the role of what her son did. So sounds pretty heavy, but could be a good one. I hear good things about it. And then we have the plot. So this is about a professor who, one of his students turns in a manuscript and he tells him, this is crap, you're an amateur, you don't know how to write, blah, blah, blah. But then the student ends up dying, and the professor lied about it because then he turns around and uses that dead student's manuscript to publish it under his own name and say that he wrote it. So obviously he was just being jealous. Then we have If We Were Villains, and this one has a lot to do with like Shakespeare, and it can be very academic in that way, and so that can be a little bit boring for some people, but then some people really love this book. So this is about a group of college students that are studying Shakespeare and putting on Shakespeare, and then murder happens and they have to figure out what happened. Okay, another one I haven't read yet is The Lying Game by Ruth Ware, and this one sounds like it's supposed to be a little bit like Pretty Little Liars. We have this group of friends that are, kind of the mean girls of the school, and they like to play these little social games, but then somebody ends up dead, and we're trying to figure out as the reader what happened. And then we have Pen Pal, and I absolutely love this book. It's so, so good. So this is about a little boy, and I can't remember what age he was. I think it was kindergarten or maybe first grade. But they had this assignment at school where they write a letter and they put it in a balloon, and the balloon flies off, and balloons inevitably pop or land. And so wherever it lands, somebody might find this letter and then write back to you and become your pen pal. And so it's a school project that they've done every year, and the kids always really love it, and they always find these very interesting pen pals. Well, unfortunately, this little boy, his balloon finds somebody that's not a good person and becomes a stalker. And this little boy, he doesn't understand what's going on because he's too young to know what's going on. And so it's very interesting because he's just writing down like his life and his childhood, trying to figure things out, because he's like, I feel like there's some weird, strange things that happened in my childhood, but I don't really understand it. I don't know what happened. And so he's just writing it down as a way to like internalize it. But as the reader, we can see exactly what's going on, and it's terrifying, and it's so good and so well written. Okay, then we have Confessions, and this is about a teacher, and her daughter is actually a student at the school she works at, and she gets involved with these mean girls, and she ends up dead. And so the mom is irate, and these girls won't tell her what happened to her daughter and won't fess up what they did to her. And so she takes it upon herself to get revenge on these girls that murdered her daughter. And then we have Whisper Down the Lane by Clay Malloy Chapman, and I really enjoyed this one a lot. The ending kind of lost me a little bit, but the first like 2/3, I really, really loved this book. I thought it was really good. This is about the satanic panic back in the 80s, and our main character is also a school teacher, and he also has a son that attends his school. And one day they find this dead rabbit on campus, and so the kids are kind of freaked out, and the parents start thinking it's Satan and all this different stuff, and so they're trying to figure out these creepy things that keep happening at the school. But it's it's academic because it takes place at a school, and the main character is a school teacher, but it's also the perfect read for this time of year because it has all the Halloween fall vibes. There's like a Halloween fair that they go to with corn mazes and caramel apples and stuff, so it's just a perfect read for this time of year. And then we have Madam, or Madame, however you want to pronounce that, and this is not my favorite, I'm going to admit. So I thought the atmosphere was pretty good, and it definitely had those academic vibes. But when you figure out what's actually going on at the school at the end, I just thought it was kind of ridiculous in my opinion. And I wasn't like super connected to the characters. So this was kind of a miss for me. But I could see it really working for others. So I wanted to include it in this video anyways for those of you that it might work for. So this takes place in kind of a remote, like private school, and we're following this new teacher, and she knows almost immediately that something weird is going on because the teachers are not really forthcoming on certain aspects of the school and what's going on. And in particular, these girls, the students, you know, something is weird with them, and nobody would tell her what's going on and why the school runs the way that it does. So I kind of want to keep it vague because I don't want to give anything away. But, you know, if you're just looking for those dark academia atmospheric vibes, I think you will get that from this. Then we have For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. I haven't read this one, but it gives me Patrick Bateman vibes from American Psycho. So you have this professor at this college, and he's kind of getting sick of dealing with these students that he has to deal with every day because he feels like, you know, he's so intellectually ahead of everybody and all of these kids are stupid and selfish. And so he kind of starts weeding the students out, you know, and taking out the students that are petty and selfish and just there to mess around, all these different things. And so he just feels like he knows what's best type thing. So I kind of love that, you know, when you have this villain that's kind of sophisticated and knowledgeable, and, you know, he feels like getting rid of these students is the good of the school. And, you know, I kind of really love those vibes, so I'm hoping I get that because I'm thinking that's what this is. Then we have The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, and I haven't read this one either because I've heard really mixed reviews for this one, so I just haven't picked it up yet. But this one reminds me a lot of We Were Villains, where it's very like academic centered. It's about these students and at this college and all of that. I don't actually know what the plot of this is. I just know it takes place at Cambridge University, and you can tell from the cover that it's very academic. So yeah, I guess I should have read this. It looks like it has to do with Greek mythology, and of course there's a murder. So instead of, you know, Shakespeare, it's Greek mythology. Sounds like it could be a great one for this time of year. And then we have The Cloisters. This one doesn't actually take place at a school, but it just seems academic. Like it just kind of gives those kind of vibes to me. And it takes place at a museum. I think it's an art museum. Oh, she wanted to work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but instead she got assigned to the Cloisters, which is a Gothic museum and garden renowned for its collection of medieval art and enigmatic researchers. So I think this has a lot to do with like tarot readings and like palm readings and stuff like that, but it just kind of gives those academic vibes, you know, when it's kind of gothic and dark, and it just seems like a good one for this time of year. And then we have In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. So I'm willing to bet most of you have already heard of this book and have likely already read it, but this is about a group of friends that go to a school reunion, and then somebody ends up dead and they have to solve the murder. And then we have The It Girl by Ruth Ware. I have not read this one either. I've only read one Ruth Ware book, and that was Turning of the Key. But anyways, I hear this is academic because it takes place, at least in the past, it takes place at a college campus because our main character becomes friends with this girl that's kind of the it girl, you know, hence the title, where she's very popular and outgoing and everybody loves her. And so our main character, she's more of an introvert, a little bit more standoffish, but she kind of gets pulled into the orbit of this popular girl and they become friends. But then later on, her friend ends up murdered. And so now that she's married and has, I think, a kid on the way, or she already has a kid, yeah, they're expecting their first child. And the man convicted of killing April has died in prison. And so at first she's relieved, but then things happen that make her think that maybe this man wasn't the guy that actually murdered her friend. And so now she's on the hunt to find out who actually did it. Okay, so that's all of my adult academic school setting books. So now we're going to get into the YA books, but I do have one middle grade, and that's Dreadwood by Jennifer Killick. And I love reading the little blurbs, you know, when you're reading YA or middle grade books, because it says detention has never been so deadly. So I thought that was really funny. I haven't read this one yet. I don't even really know what it's about, but, you know, I know it takes place at a school and it's about detention, and it's got this little school on the cover. So it looks like it says, when classmates Angelo, Hallie, Gustav, and Nara are forced to come to school on a Saturday. Oh no. They already think it's the worst day ever. But they're wrong. Things are about to get seriously scary. Sounds like it should be fun. And then I have only 2 fantasy on this list. We have Ella Enchanted, and I absolutely adore this book. And for those of you that have seen the movie, you're probably like, why is this on this list? But if I remember correctly, I feel like the first third of the book takes place at a finishing school, and that's where she meets her best friend. And so that's why I included this on this list. But yeah, I've read this book several times. I haven't read it like recently. It's probably been 15 years. But as a young adult, I read this several times. I absolutely love it. And then we have Princess Academy. So this is kind of the same thing. It's more of a finishing school. But you have this small village up on the mountains, and their job is to collect stone from the mountain and ship it down to the valley. And so their prince is in need of a princess, and they thought it would be a good idea to find a commoner to become their queen or whatever. And so they find this little village up in the mountains and decide that it's a good place to find this princess, and they start this academy or this school to make these girls into something more befitting of a princess than just this small village mountain girl, you know. So they teach them, you know, how to speak and act and be polite and which fork to use or whatever, so that they'll be fit to marry the prince. And so it kind of turns into a competition of who's going to be the best at this finishing school, and whoever, you know, does all their lessons perfectly gets to be the next princess. So I really loved this book. I thought it was so cute and so fun. Okay, and so because it's football season, and I honestly don't care about football. I don't care about sports. I don't like sports. But it is that time of year where in the fall time, football season starts. So I have some books about some cheerleaders. So this is a point horror book, and it's called The Cheerleader, and it's by Caroline B. Cooney. And I have not read this. I actually just hauled this book not too long ago, but I'm excited to get to it. And then, of course, we have the Cheerleaders series by R.L. Stine. These are Fear Street books. So you got The First Evil and The Second Evil and The Third Evil. I do own The Fourth Evil, but it's an ebook, and then there's a fifth one, but I don't own that one yet. So, one of the girls on the cheer squad, it starts picking off the other girls on the cheerleading squad one by one. But it's more of like a possession thing. So, very fun. And then this one's not really about a cheerleader, but it does have a cheerleader on the cover, which I'm kind of confused about because our main character, she's like a gothic chick. She's not a cheerleader. She might have a friend that is, so maybe that's why, but why wouldn't it show the main character? So that's kind of weird. But I figured it has a cheerleader on the cover, and it does take place at a school a lot. So this is the beginning of a zombie series. So Generation Dead, because they're all zombies. But it's very unique because they're not the I eat your brain zombies that are mindless, that just stumble along. It's not like that. It's like a contagion, and it only affects teenagers. Every teenager that contracts this illness and dies, they come back, and so they bury them, and then they come back and they're like, my son or daughter is back from the dead, But even though they're dead and they're zombies, they're not the I'm gonna eat you zombies. They just happen to be dead, and so they still function, and they don't function like real humans, but they're not trying to eat you, but they're just dead. But they can't really speak at first, so they kind of, like it takes them a while to be able to speak properly again, and some of them don't ever get there. And then they kind of shamble and walk around, but the longer they're alive, or reanimated, I should say, the better they get at walking and the better they get at talking. But what's really interesting about this series is it kind of leads to some prejudice. And so people that are actually alive, they hate these kids that have been reanimated, and they feel like they shouldn't have any rights because they're actually dead. and once you're dead, you don't have any rights. You don't have any protection. You don't have the same luxuries and privileges of people that are alive. And so I thought that there was some really good commentary in here about that. And it was just a really interesting take on a zombie story. So I didn't love the main character, I'll be honest. I thought she was pretty flat and boring, but I enjoyed the actual story. And I think the third one we follow, I think her name's Karen. And she's a much more interesting protagonist to follow. And I kind of wish that we had been following her the entire time. But yeah, the story behind it is very interesting though. So if you're into zombie books, this is a good one to pick up. Okay, and then we have Autumn Crow High by Cameron Chaney, who is also a booktuber on YouTube. And he just came out with this, I think, last year. And, it's called Autumn Crow High, and it's got a picture of a school. So definitely academic. Probably takes place a lot at a school. I haven't read this one yet. This is meant to be a throwback to vintage horror. So this takes place in the 90s. And he's got, his Letterman jacket on and stuff. So it sounds like it should be a good time. And then I have some other vintage horror books. We have Down a Dark Hall by Lois Duncan. She's the one that wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I love, again, the blurbs when it's like, at Blackwood School for Girls, the private lessons might kill you. So I like that. It says, Kit knows that evil waits for her in the dark halls of Blackwood School for Girls. But she doesn't know it has already entered her life, and who will believe her if her fears are really only when she sleeps? And then we have a Terror Academy book called Summer School. It says she dumped her clean-cut boyfriend for a sleazy biker, and now she's paying for that decision. Then we have Final Exam by A. Bates. And The Yearbook. This one, I do want to tell you, I don't think it's going to be spoilery, but I just want you to know that this is more cosmic horror. And I did not know that when I read it, and I'm not a big fan of cosmic horror. And it was so unexpected that it made me really kind of not like this book. So I wanted you to go in with the right expectations that this is more cosmic-y horror than what I thought it was going to be, which was like a murder mystery. So just be aware of that. Then we have Teacher's Pet. Then we have some Fear Street books. I absolutely adore Fear Street. It was my favorite series of all time when I was in junior high. And then we have The Final Grade. I just love this cover. Then we have The Cheater, about a girl who cheats on her math exam, and the boy that she had give her the answer, she has to give him something in return, and so she was willing to give him one date, but then he kind of turned into a stalker. Then we have College Weekend. I really enjoyed this one a lot. I thought it was fantastic. The end gets a little bit silly and she makes some stupid decisions, but other than that, I thought this was a great one. Then we have Trapped. This one is my favorite Fear Street novel of all time. I absolutely adore this book. I've read it many times. And this is about a group of kids who all go to detention. And then while they're stuck in detention, they discover a tunnel underneath the school. It was supposed to be like a safety thing back in the 50s or something, if there was a bomb or whatever. But there's this whole warren of tunnels underneath the school, and there's something evil living down there. So good. And then when we think of school, we think of homecoming and prom and different things like that. So we have Who Killed the Homecoming Queen and The Prom Queen, which is a really good one. I like this one. And then keeping with that theme, we have The Weight of Blood, which is a Carrie retelling, but this is a YA book about a girl who is half black, half white, and she's been passing for white this entire time when she's really, not completely Caucasian. And so when people find out that she has African-American blood in her, they get upset and become mean. And, the whole blood thing that, Carrie is known for happens. I haven't read this one yet, but I hear it's fantastic and very good. So I'm excited to get to it soon. And then we got Pretty Dead Queens. And this is about a homecoming queen that ends up being murdered, and then this girl, she goes to live with her grandmother at her Victorian house, and her grandmother actually writes murder mysteries, and so she kind of wants to see if she can discover who's killing this homecoming queen. And then Two Can Keep a Secret. This has a very similar premise where a homecoming queen is murdered, and then like years later more homecoming queens are being killed by like a copycat killer or something, and she's trying to figure out who done it. And then Karen McManus, pretty much most of her books are school settings. So we also have Nothing More to Tell. So this is about a teacher who was murdered, and these students are trying to figure out who murdered their favorite teacher. And then we have You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen McManus, and this one is about a group of kids who skip school, and I see another student who's also skipping school, and they follow him, but then they inadvertently see him get murdered, and so then they're terrified that they're going to be next, and they want to know who did it and who's behind it so they can put behind bars so that they'll be safe. Okay, we have The Name of the Star by Maureen Johnson, and this takes place at a boarding school, and I absolutely adore this series. It's so good. I completely love the writing style. I love our main character. I just thought it was really fun. And this one is a take on Jack the Ripper. So she's at this boarding school, and these girls are being murdered in a similar fashion to Jack the Ripper. So anyways, it's very fun. I love this series. Then we have A Lesson in Vengeance. I have not read this one yet, but it says Felicity Morrow is back at the Dalloway School, perched in the Catskills Mountains. The centuries-old ivy-covered campus was home until the tragic death of her girlfriend. Now, after a year away, she's returned to finish high school. She even has her old room in Godwin House, the exclusive dormitory rumored to be haunted by the spirits of 5 Galloway students. Girls some say were witches. The Dalloway 5 all died mysteriously, one after another, right on Godwin's grounds. So, sounds good. I love witches, love ghosts. So, then we have The Narrow by Kate Alice Marshall. And I was interested not only because the cover is absolutely gorgeous, but I read The Companion by Katie Allender, and that's one of my favorite YA novels ever. Absolutely loved it. And this one sounds similar, and so I was very intrigued by it. So this is about, there's like a school, and there's a river behind that school, and people say that, people drowned in it all the time. And so there was this girl that supposedly drowned in this river, but she came back, or she didn't fully drown, but now she's like can't be around water. Like any amount of water will harm her, and so she's having like psychological issues about it, and like phobias, and she's everything around her is unsafe. And so her mom hires this girl to kind of be her companion and make sure she's safe and make sure she's not alone. But while she's there, she'll hear the sounds of rain, and so she'll go to look out the window and it's not raining. Or she'll come into the room and find like puddles, but there's no explanation for how the puddle got there. Or just different weird occurrences like that. And then she finds this girl on the grounds who's half drowned, but there's no water anywhere around. There's no lakes or ponds, or anything. So she's like, how did you get here? And how are you half drowned when there's no water anywhere? So it sounds like a really fun time. I haven't read this one. It just came out the beginning of this year, I believe. Could have been last year, but either way, it came out not too long ago, so I haven't read it yet, but I'm very excited to. And then we have The 10th Girl, and I haven't read this one yet either, but it takes place at a finishing school in Argentina. So our main character, she's originally from Buenos Aires, but she is trying to run away from the military there that apparently killed her mother, and so she travels to Argentina and she becomes a teacher at this finishing school. But it sounds like it's very gothic and isolated, and some eerie, haunting things happens at this school. So I'm very excited to read this. And then this last one I also haven't read yet, but I'm really want to, and it's called The Dead House by Dawn Kurtagich. And this one, I think it sounds like there's a few students at this private school that end up killed, and she's trying to figure out what happened. And she discovers the diary of a former student that lived here like a long time ago, and she starts to discover that the school has secrets about it. And what I really love about this book is it's got all this like mixed media stuff. Like it's got pictures, it's got diary entries, it's got emails, it's got transcripts. Like there's a lot going on in this book, which I think would be really fun and interesting. And then we have Ace of Spades, and I haven't read this one either, but this was very popular a few years ago, so you've likely heard of this one, so I'm not really going to say much about it. But there's this girl that's like makes an unlikely friend in this boy, and they start getting like these threatening messages, and they're trying to track down who is threatening them. And then we have The New Girl by Jessie Sutanto, and this is, you guessed it, about a new girl. The main character is our new girl, and she gets a scholarship to this very prestigious private school, and she's kind of reluctant to be there. Like, she wants to be there academically, but she doesn't want to be there socially because these people, have rich people problems. They have private planes and designer bags, and she's just a normal middle class person, so she doesn't love being there, and then she starts to discover that there might be nefarious things happening at this school. And then we have The Vicious Games, and I haven't read this one yet. So it's about this girl who tries to be perfect and do everything right because she's trying to get a scholarship to go to whatever college she wants to go to. But she slips up and she ends up getting in a fight, and so now they are gatekeeping her from getting into any school. So now she doesn't even have the option to go to college, basically, because she can't afford it. And she won't be let in because now she's got this record. And so she decides to take place in this game that these rich kids are putting on. And if you make it through the games, then you'll be able to get the money to go to wherever you want to go. Yet another one I haven't read yet is The Legacies by Jessica Goodman. And this sounds like it has a very similar premise to These Vicious Games because it's about this girl who wants to go to this school, but all these elitist kids are making it hard to do so. And they have what's called this legacy ball, which is kind of how they're going to end their high school before they start college, but then somebody gets murdered. So anyway, sounds like a good time. And then we have Catherine House, and again, I haven't read this, but I hear mixed things about it. Some people really love it, and some people say it's really strange and bizarre. So I don't always love strange and bizarre books, so I don't know. But it just says, a seductive, gothic-infused debut of literary suspense set within a secluded elite university and following a dangerously curious, rebellious undergraduate who uncovers a shocking secret about an exclusive circle of students and the dark truth behind her school's promise of prestige. So it sounds like it's going to have all the dark academia vibes. It's going to be kind of elitist and pretentious and have this creepy, eerie school. So hopefully it'll be a good time. And then we have Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, and I absolutely love this series. Again, it's a favorite of mine. I absolutely adore this trilogy. So this is more of a thriller, and this is about this really cool but kind of bizarre school set up in the mountains. Again, very elitist, but they only accept people that are very creative or have big innovations and great creative ideas, and it's kind of a school meant for the gifted type thing. And so it's kind of funny because our main character, she gets accepted to the school, but her main talent basically is being a sleuth. She loves Hercule Poirot and Sherlock Holmes, and those are her heroes, and that's kind of her thing, which doesn't really sound like she's not like she does sculptors or builds computers or stuff. So it's a little bit bizarre that she would have been accepted to the school in the first place. But, she believes so too. She's kind of like, why am I going to this school? I'm not like these other people. But I love the atmosphere in this book. I love the campus. I think it's so fun and interesting. And the characters in this book are very fun and interesting. And this is a murder mystery that spans all 3 trilogies, so you're not going to know at the end of this book who did it, so just be aware of that. But she's trying to solve the mystery. So the guy that owned the school, his daughter was kidnapped, and then one of the students stumbled upon the kidnapper and she was murdered. And so in the present day, she's trying to solve this cold case mystery that happened on the campus at this school. But yeah, this is a really good one. I love it. So I want to end this book with 2 mangas, and Junji Ito is my absolutely favorite mangaka of all time. I absolutely love his horror books or short stories, and he did The Dissolving Classroom. So it's pretty, gross. You have this classroom at the school and all the students just like start melting. And then you have the drifting classroom. And I haven't read this one yet. There's 3 of them and they're super big. And this is like a classic. This one was written, quite a long time ago. So the pictures are quite dated. But again, it's about a school and this weird, bizarre, evil things start happening at this school. So there you have it. That's all my books that have to do with schools, have school settings, have academic vibes to it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by hitting that like button. And please leave me a comment to let me know of these books, which ones you've read and enjoyed, or which ones you're adding to your TBR. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and we could become friends and talk about books. And please be sure to hit the notification bell so that you won't miss a video from me, and I'll catch you next time. See ya!